Our next guest today is David Tanner. He's the Executive Director of the Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals. Now, David's career in city government has spanned 8 mayors, dozens of city council members, and 3 separate housing codes. Please welcome to the show, David Tanner. Mr. Tanner, thanks for being a guest on Game Changers today.
Thank
so,
you.
8 mayors? That's unbelievable.
Yeah, I started in 1971. At that time, Tommy D'Alessandro III was mayor, and William Donald Schaefer was president of the city council back then. And then I've been lucky enough to be here for going on 47 years.
Wow, well, good for you. What is it that keeps you coming back day after day after day?
Well, it's been a good career. I started as a housing inspector, fresh out of college. I had no clue what I was getting into. And I took a test, and about a year later I was called in for an interview, and that's how I started my career with the city. But as I got into housing code enforcement, I saw that there was a lot of opportunity for the city, and I, of course, grew up in the city, born in Baltimore, and I consider myself a product of Baltimore City through Govans Elementary all the way through City College, high school, and University of Baltimore, and Morgan State University. So everything's been within the city limits, so to speak. And in 1976, I received a master's degree in urban planning from Morgan State University because of my interest in what I've learned through housing code enforcement. It just piqued my interest in land use in general. So I obtained a master's degree. In 1978, I became the zoning enforcement officer for the city.
And how was that? How did you like that?
I liked that very much. It was challenging. Everything that came across your desk had to do with the use of land, from dwellings to commercial uses, just everything.
And you were part of a group or yourself that had to make the decision what goes, what stays?
Yes.
Okay.
So the permit process began in the zoning administration office. The applications came through our office to start the process. And we reviewed it, applied the standards under the zoning code to the application. And the zoning code regulates not only land use, but also it regulates the size and location of buildings that can go on any given property. So plans for new construction came through our office, and it was just a great opportunity to be involved in the whole process.
Yeah. Now, over the span of 8 mayors, I'm sure you've seen lots of changes in Baltimore City in regards to working in the zoning office and housing.
Yes. But basically, the issues stay the same. People want to use property for sometimes things that they can't use it for, or they have dreams of establishing something that may require some complex review and public hearings and processes that involve not only the permit office but the Department of Planning. There's been numerous when I started, there were actually 2 separate planning offices in the city, one with the Department of Planning and one with the Department of Housing. They had their own separate planning component. urban renewal plans.
Yeah, lots of different offices. But I want you to hold that thought because we're going to take a quick break and come back and talk more about the zoning process and all of that good stuff. So folks at home, stay with us. We'll be right back with more Game Changers. And welcome back with my guest, David Tanner. He's the Executive Director of the Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals. So let's talk about this new zoning code that was just established. To me, it sounds a bit complicated, but let us know. What is it like?
The new code the city's broken down into various districts: residential, commercial, industrial, mixed use like office, industrial, that kind of thing. And within each district, there's a group of uses that are permitted under what they call a generic category, like retail sales. So if you're in a district that allows for retail sales, you know that that's something you can establish on your property. Or if it's strictly residential, the city's broken down into maybe 15 separate residential zoning districts that range from single-family detached homes to high-rise multiple dwellings, depending on the district that you're located in. The same with industrial. But instead of just having industrial, they come up with what they call mixed-use areas, where you can have a small industrial site with retail and other restaurants and other businesses that would mix in with that. It just makes more sense in today's world to be able to group things together that way. The zoning code, the new code, also treats off-street parking differently than we did in the past.
How so?
Baltimore City, of course, developed before the automobile, and in the old code there was strict parking requirements depending on the use. In today's highly dense neighborhoods, there's business like this, what they call a C1 commercial district for neighborhood businesses, that does not require any parking because it's so already developed. There's no space to come up with parking lots. So based on certain formulas, you're allowed to put a use in that has no parking requirements because it just makes sense to do it that way.
Does your office receive any zoning appeals?
Yeah.
Based on, okay.
The appeal process starts with the permit office in the Department of Housing. The zoning administrator's office reviews an application. They determine if it's permitted or if it needs an exception, a variance we call it, for parking or some type of building restriction that needs to be considered under the variance requirements, or the signage or those kinds of things. In that case, they would deny the application, but allow the applicant to file an appeal to the zoning board, and we would have a public hearing and determine whether or not what they're seeking can be granted.
And in most cases, are they granted, or is there more work that needs to be done?
In most cases, they're granted, but only after some detailed analysis and recommendations from the Department of Planning. They weigh in on the use. Other agencies can weigh in on it: police, fire, health department, the community. The immediate neighbors have a right to be heard. So all those factors are brought into the appeal process, and the board, after the public hearings, deliberates on it and then votes to approve or disapprove.
Mr. Tanner, do you think this new code will have an impact on future development in Baltimore City?
Yes, very much. For example, the Port Covington area was designated with their own separate boundaries and designations as if it was like a planned unit development where the developers have a set guidelines for the whole area instead of a lot by lot designation so that they can better plan for the future. The code also allows for additional planned unit developments to be created throughout the city by ordinance of the mayor and city council. So they don't necessarily come to the zoning board, but we do get to comment on the legislation as it's moving forward. The board makes recommendations to new planned developments and so forth. So I think the new code is insightful in recognizing that there are going to be areas like that that need specialized plans to go forward.
Gotcha. All right. Well, very good information, Mr. Tanner. I want to thank you for being a guest on today's show. We appreciate having you here.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for watching this edition of Game Changers. I'll see you next time. I'm Karen Campbell.